Alright, so this review for WWE Crown Jewel was supposed to go up yesterday, but what ended up happening was because of my insane sleep schedule, I missed the first hour of the show, and I was never able to catch up on to the first hour of the show until now. So, a day late, but I do have my review for WWE Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, featuring Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns in a big publicity stunt championship match that I think may have actually done more for Logan Paul than people realize. The show was a newsworthy show, but not that newsworthy. You could probably skip this show and it likely wouldn't have that much of an impact. There was a title change on it, but besides the show having a lot of really good matches, it really doesn't have like anything that's too major going into the future unless Jake Paul actually does decide to join WWE. I really like what they did with Jake Paul here. First of all, let's talk about the main event. Then we're going to go through sort of what was important about the show and impactful. Because I do think you should watch the show. Yes, the show is probably not super newsworthy like I mentioned a minute ago, but you should watch the show because all the matches were pretty good. Everybody worked hard. Even the Strowman Omos match, which we knew was going to be garbage, like even they tried. And I'm not saying it was a great 5-star catch as catch can classic. That's not what I'm saying. But it was very much a 1980s big man match that you would see with like the Barbarian, the Warlord, some of the guys like that, maybe even El Gigante. Except this was probably a lot better. I guess the word is like rehearsed and choreographed, but I'm jumping back here. But that's what I have to say about that match. It was actually a little bit better. But Logan Paul, man, what a hell of a main event match he had with Roman Reigns. For a guy like Logan Paul, this is his third pro wrestling match so far. And I feel like he has caught on to the business faster than any celebrity, including even Ronda Rousey. And I think she's up there. I think she's somebody who absolutely caught up to the business fast. But Logan Paul in his third match was doing moves that you're not supposed to know in your third wrestling match. How many wrestlers can say they've only had 3 matches and they're already this good by their third match? Now, one of the big secrets here is like with the Omos Braun Strowman match. This match was very, very well choreographed and rehearsed. It was very well planned out. It wasn't called in the ring, but either way, the execution of the maneuvers and the ability to make everything look nice and tight is something that takes years to learn, and yet Logan Paul has got it pretty figured out. For those who don't know, Shawn Michaels, one of the greatest of all time, did co-train him. So because Shawn's involved in his training, that's probably going to help him out a bonkers amount. But man, what a great match. Jake Paul comes out there with his own music and everything, got a big reaction a week after knocking out Anderson Silva. No, not knocking him out, but winning. He didn't knock him out, but he won the fight. He almost knocked him out. I mean, there was that one knockdown, but he didn't actually knock him out. Anyways, he comes down and he does like throw his punches at the Usos. I think one of the Usos may have actually been injured from this, but he did that, and yeah, and you know he ran in. But what ended up happening was Solo Sikoa came out. They were distracted. Logan gets back in the ring. Roman Reigns hits him with Superman punch in the spear and gets the pin. But prior to that, dude, Logan Paul did a buff blockbuster. He did a huge frog splash. Then he did a frog splash from the top rope all the way to the outside. He was busting out simple moves like clotheslines and hip tosses, and then doing the more advanced moves like the ones that I mentioned. Plus, he actually did sweet chin music, including with the whole like stepping your foot on the ground. So, Logan Paul, man, tremendous work, and a guy who he's got a really bright future, man. Logan Paul versus Pat McAfee or something like that, or Logan Paul versus Bad Bunny would be a phenomenal celebrity match. I mean, these are guys who, all 3 of these guys, came into the wrestling business, didn't have decades of training like other people did, and yet were still able to adapt to it and able to make it work. Not a lot of celebs can do that, man. Go back to WrestleMania 11. You know, Lawrence Taylor wins the match with Bam Bam, and he's completely exhausted because the match gassed him, whereas Bam Bam gets right back up and walks to the back. It's a different kind of conditioning. But either way, yeah, the match was not. I didn't think it was that bad. Braun Strowman won because I believe Braun Strowman. This is the Braun Strowman and Omos match. Strowman won because I think they're setting up Strowman against Roman for the Royal Rumble. That's what I think is going to happen. The Usos against the Brawling Brutes. Really good match. I was thinking about this, yo. And when you talk about the greatest tag teams in the history of the business, right? You got like people like Tully and Arn. You got the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express. You've got the Hardy Boys in that list, the Dudley Boys. The Usos have got to be in that talk now. They've got to be. I was just thinking about this, like not just their long title reign, but when you go back, the Usos have been WWE contracted performers since like 2007, and they've done a lot. And that's like 15 years. And these guys have always been great talents, but I think they're getting better and better and better. And really, when I think about it, during the first Usos heel turn, which I think was either 2016 or 2017, that was really when I started to see how awesome they could be as heels. Before they were just like kind of like the Samoan versions of the Young Bucks. But they've really improved. They're very, very versatile performers. And they got to be in the running, dude. They've got to be. This is a great match, yo. Pete Dunne. I don't know if he's ever going to actually be called Pete Dunne, even though he should be. He did a great job. He worked his ass off. Even Rich Holland, who I'm not a fan of, kept up. I'm not a big fan of his, but he kept up. Very, very solid match. Then they had also on the card, we had Judgment Day versus the OC, and that's going to probably bridge into an eventual singles match between AJ Styles and Finn Balor. They have all that history with the club. Again, really well worked. WWE six-man tags are always a lot of fun, and this is no different. It reminds me of that promo that Kenny Omega cut on Dynamite a few months ago when he came back, where he's like, we're going to give you the best singles matches, the best tag team matches, the best six-man matches, and like WWE's doing that here. Because this show had so much of a variety. You had a great six-man. You had a big man match. You had a tag match. You had the celebrity match in the main event. You had Bianca Belair and Bayley in for the Raw Women's title in the last woman standing match. They had a lot of some of this match was brutal, yo. There was a really dumb spot in the match though where it may have looked good on TV, but it's dumb when you use your brain. Where like Bayley trapped Bianca with the steel steps into like the where the apron is at, and I'm like, okay, honey, put your head down, then crawl around the apron and come out the other side. Like, there's room down there for you. Like, that was kind of dumb. But the some of the hits in the match, though, were pretty brutal. Some of the bumps were brutal. I really, really genuinely thought that Bianca was going to drop the title to Bayley here. I thought they were building up to this. And no, Bianca won. And not just that. I mean, the whole stable, Bayley's whole group came out on the losing end. Damage Control. Wait, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. No, Bayley came out on the losing end, but Damage Control won. Damage Control won back the women's tag titles, the Raw women's, well, no, it's Raw and SmackDown women's tag titles, beating Alexa Bliss and Asuka, who won the titles, like 2 weeks ago. It was, I'm not sure why they swapped the titles, to be honest. I'm guessing it's going to eventually lead to Sasha and Naomi coming back and going up against them for the women's titles, but I'm wondering why they even went with the Asuka, Alexa Bliss win. Like, what's the story behind that? I don't know. They also did a segment with Bray Wyatt. This happened right before the main event, where they're continuing this Uncle Howdy storyline. Now, I don't know where it's going to go, and I'm not sure exactly whose idea it is, but if I was a betting man, I would say this is a Bray Wyatt idea. This is probably some of those ideas he wanted to implement that Vince McMahon wouldn't allow, and we don't know if it's actually a good idea, if Vince was right or if Vince was wrong. As of right now, we don't know because this storyline's way too young, but basically Bray Wyatt is coming out there saying that he's very thankful to be welcomed back and that he was in a dark place. And then Uncle Howdy's telling him that it's all BS and that he's wearing a mask. In other words, he's kind of calling him a fraud and saying that's all BS, which I like that because when you have a villain, because I'm guessing Uncle Howdy's the heel here, who is basically, thinks he's right, thinks he's righteous. Or maybe Uncle Howdy is actually the babyface, warning us that Bray Wyatt's being deceitful to us. I really love where this is going. It's a bit confusing, and it kind of knocked me off a bit when I first saw it. I was kind of like, okay, well, this is a weird story, but every week that goes by, we get more and more clues, and they're taking their time with it. They are taking their time with it, which is what AEW has failed to do with a lot of their angles. WWE under Triple H has been doing it slowly until we have a solution. There's all kinds of theories now about who Uncle Howdy is. Is it Bo Dallas? Is it another wrestler we don't know about? Is it actually Bray Wyatt playing the role? It sounds like Bray Wyatt. Like, who is it? And where's it going to go? Is it going to lead to eventually Bray Wyatt going mad? They can do a lot of different things. Also, on this same show, we had Drew McIntyre, Karrion Kross in a steel cage. Karrion Kross got the pinfall in the last pay-per-view, which was a victory over Drew McIntyre in a strap match, a really good match. In this match, they had a classic old-school steel cage match. Pretty brutal, I would say. It's hard to have a modern cage match now because we have various sort of enhanced cages. We have the Elimination Chamber. We have the Hell in a Cell. We have now the Fight Pit. There's all these different sort of modern cages. So a traditional cage match is usually something that's just, something that was a big deal in the 70s and 80s. And not so much in the 90s when we had like a modern cage be introduced, a.k.a. the Hell in a Cell. WCW had the triple cage. Well, they worked a pretty good match. McIntyre won, which I kind of knew that he would, but he did not pin Karrion Kross. So they did this. McIntyre left the cage and won like that, not pinning Karrion Kross to sort of say that Karrion Kross has not yet been pinned because they're obviously going for a monster push with him. How far they go with it, we'll see. But if you remember when Triple H is booking NXT in 2021, which I don't want to remember because, 2020, and I don't want to remember it because that was a very dark time. That was a really, really dark time for us. I don't even want to remember wrestling during that year, but I do remember how good NXT was and how awesome Karrion Kross was when he was getting pushed by Triple H, and so we're back to that again. The show opened with Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley. This match was interesting because Lashley really kind of dominated. It wasn't a very long match, but it was good. Lashley kind of dominated Lesnar more than he really had been doing. It was starting off pretty even, but then Lashley started to kind of get a big domineering win. And then Brock did the Bret Hart finish where Lashley had Brock in the Hurt Lock. Brock kicked back and lands on top of him for the 1-2-3. Now, what's interesting about the match is that this is the first time I can remember in years that Brock has not been in the title picture. Brock has always been in the title picture every time he gets brought back. He's feuding with the top guy or challenging for the title or having the title. Brock is always in the title picture. And yet now, he's not. He's been moved down a tad. He's feuding with Bobby Lashley in an upper mid-card feud. It is a main event feud, but I love the fact that he's not in the title picture because that makes sense to me. That is... you can't always have him. He's been in the title picture since 2012, since he came back. The Cena feud, and then he had the Punk feud and the Triple H feud. After that, and the Taker feud, then he got in the title picture. He went from being an attraction to being a champion attraction. Now he's back to being an attraction again, and I like that. And I hope that this feud continues. I think it will because Brock eked out a win. They're going to have a more decisive victory later on when they actually have the real match, which could be at WrestleMania, it could be at the Royal Rumble. I don't think the feud's over, nor should it be. I'm actually okay with this Lashley-Lesnar feud, and I'm glad it's continuing. So you had a lot of good matches on this show. Everybody worked hard. Where the storylines go from here, with Damage Control getting the tag titles, you would logically think that you're going to have Naomi and Sasha challenge at some point, but you also have Bianca there, who is still the champion. And I was thinking they were going to eventually have Damage Control clean sweep and have Bayley with the title and then do the Bianca, Sasha, and Naomi feud against Damage Control, which I think is going to happen anyway. It's just maybe not yet. But we also have a women's War Games match coming up at the Survivor Series. So I'm looking forward to Raw tomorrow because they're going to start building towards the War Games, and I always like this time of year. I mean, I went to NXT War Games 3 years ago in Chicago, and that was an incredible show. That I went to Survivor Series. Survivor Series and War Games being one show now is awesome, and I really can't wait to see how they build it because it was really exciting 3 years ago, and last 3 years, 2020, 2021, you have your obvious, 2020 had the global pandemic, and then 2021 was just that Roman Big E match didn't work for me, man. It did not work for me at all. Even though the Charlotte Becky thing was interesting, if you remember that behind the scenes thing. Now they have a chance to really give us a good build. What do you think about the show? Let me know. Take care, and I'll talk to y'all next time.